Hey, War of the Vision fans, this is your global original Nashtaters bringing you back another episode of War of the Visions. So today I'm going to do a little bit of reviewing year one because we're still in the middle of 1 year anniversary celebration. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the video going over some of the stuff that's going on my account for the 1 year show and tell. Let's get into it. So the 1 year anniversary is almost over, or at least it's halfway through now. And I felt like it's important to talk about kind of like the year in review, right? Some of the stuff that's happened and what I hope to see in the future. And then of course I'm going to talk about my account. I think the most important thing that happened last year was there was a lot of expectations. In fact, for me, there wasn't much at all. And when I started playing, I realized, this game has so much potential. My expectations grew higher and higher. And when we were first introduced to Final Fantasy Tactics, it was just an exciting time. It made me feel like I was playing Final Fantasy Tactics. And when they introduced Final Fantasy Tactics Part 2, it showed to me that the game was more than willing to develop some of the tie-ins that they had with some of their other brands. Of course, we were given Final Fantasy 1, which started it all, right? And then we were given Final Fantasy 4. And of course, we celebrated many holidays, including Halloween, Chinese New Year, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And then this year, of course, we celebrated the very first April Fool's Day, which I think a lot of people have fun with that concept. And hopefully going into year 2, we'll see more collaborations. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming. And my guess is Final Fantasy Tactics shall make a quick return very soon, because when I'm leveling my units in terms of resonance, I notice that the Final Fantasy Tactic units are gaining experience. And I always think that when the game has something implemented, it shows. It gives you a little bit of hints. And the reason I say this is because Ayaka is also gaining experience along with a few other units that has already saw the EX treatment over on the JP server. So my guess is that Final Fantasy Tactics shall be returning to us very soon. Now personally, I felt like there was a lot of drama in year 1 and some of them unnecessary, and mostly there were some conspiracy things that happened, of course, and some things that the player base did not enjoy very much. And I don't really want to go over those again because it's not like I want to kind of open up wounds or anything like that, but I think it's fair to mention them because year 1 has taught us, if anything, that we should move forward with newer expectations and perhaps different way of thinking. I know there's a lot of negative feelings towards how the game is very grindy, and given the fact that it's an RPG that's based off of trying to make money with a gacha system. And I think there's no real easy way to implement things. Although technically speaking, there could be ways that they could make it a little bit more streamlined for the player base. But I think hopefully player will recognize that perhaps year 2, Square and Gumi will perhaps take that opportunity to kind of improve even more on a wonderful game that they already have. I think it goes without saying that we have plenty of materials out there covering how people feel about EX in general, and that the gap between JP and Global is still there and most likely will remain there. Therefore, perhaps global players will get the benefit of the doubt in terms of both extra things and of course planning ahead for the future. And I think going forward in year 2, I hope to see perhaps more drastic changes, and hopefully we'll get to see collaborations that are even done better than the ones that they have given us. I think Final Fantasy X is definitely the step in the right direction, and I think that if they release one of my personal hopeful collaborations in the future, which will be Chrono Trigger, that will definitely make all of my dreams come true. So now let's kind of go over my main account, my Spenders account. In the year in review, it's warranted for a show and tell finally. I think obviously the most improvement I've done on my account will be of course Yuna, which is just a very good unit, right? She's very good in both PvE and PvP, And sometimes I feel like she's a little bit overpowered and perhaps even a little bit overbearing. But there's not many ways to not counter her. There's ways to counter her, obviously. If you use, obviously, dark units that are essentially targeting her and build up a lot of magical resistance, you should be able to take her down. So, of course, Titus is going to be a unit I am going to be working on. I'm going to go ahead and get the vision cards later on. I have tons of 1 year anniversary medals that I'm looking forward to spend. And of course, I'm looking forward to some of the older units such as Kane, Rosa, Little Leela to get the special treatment that they deserve, the EX, which hopefully will bring them back to the top once again. KOR Stern is probably one of the most anticipated units that a lot of people want to see the EX treatment, hopefully making him super powerful, right? I mean, because he deserves it. He's just a really badass unit overall in the game. And I think some other units such as Warrior of Light will already get the treatment. And I think I'm hoping to see the Final Fantasy Tactics return very soon. And therefore, I can bring all of my units up to 120. And hopefully we'll get some new skills, maybe some new creative gameplay, maybe some new creative mechanics. And I think as far as older units, I don't think there's much to talk about here other than the fact that a lot of them are going to be a lot more powerful than before, hopefully. And I think there's a fine balance of making sure some of the units are not more powerful than perhaps the limited counterparts. And I think that's the trend I've noticed in this game. You can do fairly well with just utilizing any of the characters that are original or designed for this game. But as far as the limited units, such as like the collaboration units, they're just very strong, very powerful. And unfortunately, that's just how the game is designed, right? They want people to spend a lot of money. Therefore, they want to reward those people by spending money supporting the game to have access to some of the more powerful units. And that's a trend I don't think is ever going to really change going forward into year 2, 3, 4, 10. Now, as far as like lower rarity units, we'll definitely be seeing more and more of those. Simply because, well, you know, with the implementation of mastery system, I think the companies really want us to essentially level up all the units. You know, they want us to concentrate on defeating certain content by using teams of the same element. They want us to have an advantage over other players, or perhaps even in PvE, by leveling up as many units as possible. And I think that can open up a new doorway to perhaps new challenges in the future. Maybe something different than the Porcelain Tower, but very similar in the same way, essentially forcing us perhaps to manual combat situations. And I think Porcelain Tower, most of the time, you can actually auto after a while once you get exactly what you're seeking to do in that game. And I think Porcelain Tower it's going to be something that really challenges your account. And I think, unfortunately, that's where the gap between free-to-play and spenders are going to come in, because the spender, generally speaking, will have a much easier time defeating most content, whereas the free-to-play players will have definitely a bigger time in terms of, you know, trying to finish those in a more of an efficient way. And that's just gonna how it's gonna be, right? The struggle is real. And I think I'll cover another video on the topic of the gap, because I did mention previously that perhaps the free-to-play player gap between them against the spenders, and I hate to use the word against, but sometimes it's hard not to compare. And I think that gap is going to get even bigger given the implementation of mastery, given the implementation of some of those quests, in which case you have to use lower rarity units to get shards of certain characters in the game, such as Moraga himself, right? And it's unfortunate, but to be fair, those units are actually not as powerful as people thought they would be, and therefore it's a potential that they actually could be skippable. And I think moving forward into the future, I'm going to be looking forward to building more of these lower rarity units myself, because a lot of these units, I love the way they're designed. I love the way they're drawn in terms of art, and I love the way that they can be just as powerful as perhaps their higher rarity counterparts. And I think obviously there's going to be a lot of time spent in this game in terms of start building up more and more of these units, because I could tell you, the resonance is never ending, right? The weapon proficiency will end once you reach highest level, which is A, but the resonance is where it really kind of like makes the game super grindy. And the fact that every time they release something new and you really want to use it, you got to make sure that you match the resonance with all the units that you have that you enjoy playing with. And hopefully in the future, maybe they'll release it where resonance becomes a little bit easier to level up as well. But again, it's always the situation where you always think that the grass is greener on the other side. And that is never going to be an ending comparison, because you always want things to be easier, even though the game is working hard to make certain things easier. Now let's go ahead and go over my vision cards. I surprisingly do not have a lot of level 99s. I only have a handful. And these ones I feel like are really good for my account. I think going forward in the future, there are going to be certain ones that I really want to make better. But for the most part, a lot of them are really just not that good. And the fact that they implemented a system in which all the cards MR or higher are getting extra benefits, it really makes you want to boggle down and only level certain ones that's going to help you both on your playing style and based on the units that you have built. As you can see, I got my Bahamut, and thank you to all the people that showed up during the stream. By the way, Massidia Gaming showed up as well, so I do want to give a shout out to him for coming hanging out with us. That was very cool of him, and we had a really good time. It took a long time for me to get my Bahamut, but I finally got him, and we're going to work on it. Now, obviously, I can just go ahead and max it out, but I didn't because I wanted to make sure I waited till April 20th, which is the last day you could do all the ads. And those ad videos can actually give you a chance, a pretty high chance actually, to get Bahamut. So far I've already got 6 shards of free Bahamut essentially. And hopefully that trend will continue, and by the 20th, I can at least get 4 more. And then once that is finished, I'll go ahead and spend some medals and just finish it off. And I think that I'm not going to really talk a whole lot about equipment. One thing I learned about this game is that the UR equipment are very tedious to farm and very obnoxious to farm. But if you do have them maxed out, they're actually quite powerful and can potentially help you make the game a lot easier for you in terms of encounters and definitely in terms of PvP. Now, as far as this Esper is concerned, a lot of this stuff is, well, pretty rough, right? Like, some of the monsters that you have to fight to gain the extra stars are a lot harder than the others. And ironically enough, I'm gonna show you real quick if this will work here. My Bahamut, I got 3 stars, and it was super easy. I had to do it 3 times because I kept forgetting that I was supposed to get a 3-star chain, right? Or a 3 combo chain. I kept forgetting. And I was able to beat him easily. And one of the strategies I was told by the streamers or by the viewership during my stream was to use poison. So I did. But I also realized that because of the fact that Bahamut's one of his main skills is like he likes to increase resistances against 2 types every so often, it wasn't that hard because he was still taking a good amount of damage. All you really needed is make sure you had decent tanks and make sure that you have folks that can survive the hits. And I actually defeated him with ease, surprisingly. And of course, him and of course my little Cactar are the only ones that I have currently, along with my Behemoth. There are 3 stars. I think I'm going to work on a little bit more. I think I definitely want to work on more in terms of Espers. I really love the concept of Espers in this game. As you can see, I don't work on every single one that I own. And that's because, like I said before, resonance is the kind of a tedious process in this game, and it takes an awful long time to max them out. It's 1,000 runs. So no matter what you do in this game, besides I believe multiplayer, everything increases resonance, right? Like for example, during the Trial of Reckoning this last couple of weeks, I was able to essentially get resonance and weapon proficiency on some of the units during those auto farm runs. And it took a long time to get it done, but it got it done. And I think, I don't know, maybe they need to decrease the levels of the resonance. I don't know, but either way, I think I'm gonna go ahead and work on Ifrit and I guess whatever is available this coming week, which will be essentially Omega. And I'm hoping to get Omega, which I will talk about later this week, and I'm going to review that, the Esper and the Vision card, because I actually enjoy the art very much. And hopefully we can talk about how really good, or perhaps not as good, that combination is. But as you can see, certain ones I'm probably going to be ignoring for a long time until the system gets perhaps a little bit easier to do. And currently I'm okay with the ones that I have because it gets the job done, right? I have missile resistance, magic resistance, slash resistance, strike resistance, pure resistance. And that's pretty much all you really need in terms of resistance. And of course, the next thing is you just have to worry about offense. But generally speaking, there's going to be a handful of Espers that's going to be really high ranked and highly recommended by the player base that you're probably not going to need to work on every single Esper in the game. And that's going to be my plan. I'm going to start not thinking about too much about a lot of Espers that I get along the way and just work on my favorite ones. And therefore, going into year 2, it's not going to be as harder of a grind as I did in year 1, but I think it's definitely more of concentrating on really homing in on catering to my playing style, which for those of you who don't know, I love tanking and I love healing. So I'm really going to concentrate on magic, and I'm really going to concentrate on physical and magical resistances. And that's going to be kind of my goal going forward in the future. Now, in terms of what I want out of the game as far as units, because vision cards are going to be very selective, right? Generally speaking, the way you probably notice is that given the fact that they're releasing the Rob vision card to essentially make him complete, as you can say, there's going to be a lot of vision cards in the future that's going to complete certain units in the game. And if you don't own those units, there's absolutely no reason to go after those vision cards. And therefore, I think it's important to really home in on your own playing style and the units that you want to play with, and go on a journey of World Divisions alongside in your monster box. Now, I think for sure I want to go in on Final Fantasy VII, and I for sure want to go on any collaboration that really give me a nostalgic feel, because that's my main driving force in playing this game. Hopefully Final Fantasy Tactics will return with some more characters from that game, which I will definitely go in on. And of course, if there's more powerful units that comes in the future, that something I don't already have, I will definitely go in on them. But if they're just going to be repeat units of something that I already own in terms of usefulness, right, or roles, I'm not really going to go in on them. For example, if they're going to give me a much better healer in Yuna, but Yuna is still going to be good, with Ayaka still being good, Halloween Little Lita still being useful, then there's no reason to spend a couple of $100 just to get another unit just to be flavor of the month. I never really enjoy the concept of flavor of the month in gacha games. Alright, that's all the time I have for this video. So remember, time is your most valuable resource, so please spend it wisely. And for that, I want to thank you for spending your valuable resource with me and my channel. And until next time, take care of yourself and all your loved ones. Nashtaters out of here. Have a great day, folks.